Yeah, it's
Yeah,
nice to have you here for that. Exactly. I can't speak right now. Exactly that reason. Yeah, it's not really focused
yeah, that's
on.
why that's why Game Sound Club exists now for that reason and that reason alone. That there wasn't a lot of sound stuff in the program, so we're like,
Yep.
let's change that because
Yeah.
sound is cool. Sound is
Mhm.
important.
No, that's good. I mean, when I was going to York, there was very little. This was 10 years ago now.
Mm.
There was very little. Like there was composition, but it was all like very traditional, like chamber ensemble composition.
Oh
It was
yeah.
like stuff for performance. There was a tiny bit of electronic or digital music production, and there was one like film music course.
Hmm.
Uh, but other than that, there wasn't anything. So a lot of people, myself included, we just like sort of started working with the film students and doing like student films sort of on our own time.
Hmm.
And we didn't create like a club necessarily around it, but we had this community of like all these film composers who were working with them, and we did our own like student concert called the Media Music Concert, where we
Oh,
like
that's cool.
gathered a bunch of a bunch of performers, and we're talking with the faculty and being like, hey, can we like, get the concert hall and get the practice rooms? And then we were talking to video people and being like, hey, can you like put together videos of like film and video games and TV and stuff? And so we all put together this yearly show of media music with
Wow.
uh the arrangements were by us, the composers, and
Yeah.
and yeah, it was a student orchestra. So I'm well aware of the having to take student initiative to fill in the gaps in the program. I'm not sure what York is like now,
Mm.
because they sort of revamped their program to be a bit more multimedia focused.
I
Um,
I know someone that's in the York film production, I believe, uh
okay.
course and or program. And as far as I understood, uh she was just put in contact with people that were uh able to help with sound and music and stuff, or they were just given a library for sound effects, something like that.
Okay. So
Yeah,
it's still
nothing
like
nothing crazy.
student underground stuff of people just
seemed like it, yeah.
working together. Yeah, yeah. I mean, it's good when people are able to work around the institution like that. But it's like
Yeah.
I'm so like happy that there are programs for like game audio now. Like that's a thing that
Oh yeah.
people can take. Like that's awesome
Yeah.
because I don't know how much I got out of university other than all of the like extracurricular stuff that had nothing to do with
Yeah.
grades or marks or anything. It was I mean, I'll talk a bit about that. It
Mm.
was like practicing networking, practicing working with clients, practicing contracts, even if there wasn't a contract, just like having some sort of agreement with the with the student filmmaker that hey, if I make music for your film, you're actually going to put it in, because that happened to me as a student, as with student filmmakers, is that I wrote something custom for them, and then they just used the Lana Del Rey track instead,
Wow.
you know. But like it was good practice for that sort of stuff, because if I had to go into a professional like world with zero experience on dealing with people like that,
Mm.
then I'd probably be dealing with a lot worse clients than I had to. So yeah,
That is true, yeah.
it's good practice. I think that's what's great about like game jams, is that you get, especially working with people you don't know during
Mm.
game jams, it's like you get really good at dealing with others and being able to pick up red flags before it's too late.
Oh yeah, absolutely. Oh, I was just laughing when you
Yeah, I
said
found that one
didn't
out the
learn a
hard way
ton.
a couple of game games back.
Oh yeah, I think we all have to go through it. Yeah. Sorry, Carter. What were you saying?
Oh, I was just laughing when you said you didn't really necessarily learn a ton that you use from university, because I saw Hamraj laughing too, because
Yeah,
I was also
that's
laughing. Actually.
that's a
Ooh.
common thing. It's a
That's
common thing
a-
in this program, I feel.
Oh no.
Yeah, unfortunately.
There's a reason why the clubs exist.
Yeah.
You know.
Yeah, not to
Yeah.
toot this horn, but yeah, this club specifically, there's one class for game sound and that's it. So,
In the whole program.
in the whole program.
Yeah.
Yep.
Yeah.
So yeah,
It's
I'm the surrogate father, I don't know, of the class, I guess. I don't know. I'm probably overhyping myself.
Are you gonna put that
No,
down
you
on a
do
business
good.
card?
I should
Shall we
actually.
get
That's
started?
good. The
It's,
surrogate
That go
father
over
of
great.
sound. Yeah.
Yeah, we can get started. I'm assuming some people will still trickle in a little late, but that's all good. We can get this show on the road.
Yeah.
So for those of you that have hopped in a little late, welcome. We are joined by our guest speaker today, Jake, a freelance composer, sound designer, a man of many talents, has worked on many projects. Some you may know, Super Animal Royale, Dune Sea, which we played at Migs and I won't forget it. And a lot of other projects. And so I'll let him take the floor.
Thank you, thank you. Yeah, thank you for the introduction. Um, I'm always surprised when somebody has played one of my games that isn't Super Animal Royale because that's really the only one that that has had any sort of real success, which has been very exciting. But yeah, so I wait, I know how to share my screen. So how do I share my screen? Is it present now? Yeah, it is. Yeah, it is. All right, I came prepared. Haha. Nice. All right. So fancy. Yeah, so today I'm going to talk a little bit about how I got to where I am now, some of the tricks that I learned along the way, some of the things to be expecting if you want to get into game sound, or even if you still want to go a more technical route, but be able to work with audio people like me, because many audio people have zero like programming dev know-how whatsoever. So any way we can bridge that gap, perfect. So yeah, let's start off. And who am I? I'm Jake. I've been playing games and music for a long time, since I was a wee babby of tender 4 years old. I was playing Doom. Hey, uh, and yeah, I was entirely too young to be playing that, but I was playing PC games. Grew up with the N64 as well, so I was playing Majora's Mask, which is still the best Zelda game of all time. It's so good. Um, and I think this picture really captures it all. I got playing, I think, Donkey Kong 64 in front of me and the piano on the right. My mom was a musician. My dad was a computer nerd, so uh, gaming was my hobby for so long, and I was making like little I made games in like PowerPoint where it'd be like choose your own adventure games in PowerPoint, which was fun. RPG Maker, stuff like that. So it's been with me for a long time. But my mom was a musician, my dad was as well, and so I was learning piano, taking piano lessons in high school. I grew up in a small town, but the high school was surprisingly good with music. We had a recording studio. We had a MIDI lab that they were teaching us Reason, which if any of you have ever looked at Reason before, it's the most ridiculous DAW that you will ever see. Um, it's nuts. But so I was very fortunate in sort of all of the pieces falling together. And of course, in high school, I also wanted to be a rock star. So my hair was very long, and I thought I was very cool. Progressive metal band we had in high school. Um, and uh, and yeah, so I started composing and producing. It says like around 10 years ago, but honestly, it's earlier than that now because it started with like originally just writing some stuff on piano because that was my instrument. But then when I got into high school and I was playing with a band, which again, extracurricular is going to be kind of like the theme of tonight's presentation. Um, that was outside of school, but I was writing music for my band, which we were like a 5-piece band, and and yeah, I was learned how to produce in school because we had the production studio. I didn't really have a computer that can run any proper DAWs at the time. So I went to York University for school, and as we were just talking about, I learned a lot through all the stuff um, that I was doing on the side. I mean, I learned how to use. I was using Logic as a DAW, and I learned that by myself. I learned how to score to film by myself, with the help of my composer friends as well. Yeah, Reason is nuts. It's so much fun though, and yeah, there was a lot of extracurricular stuff in that, which was really cool. But part of this is to say, like, a lot of this was coming from the creative side of things rather than the technical side. Because even though my dad was a computer nerd, including like he was like into electronics and coding and stuff, it never really clicked with me. So I was all about making music, playing music. It's only until the past maybe 5 years or so that I started to get into the technical side, which has been really good because, like I said, that gap really needs to be bridged. But so, before we jump into the full story, a couple of projects I'm working on. Hamaraj, you sort of introduced it, but some other stuff I'm working on is Darkest Valley, which is a action RPG, sort of in the style of late 90s RPGs. It's like a mix of something like Legend of Mana and also Diablo. I'll show a little bit of music for that in a moment. Also, Destiny's Sword is a game I'm working on, which is a narrative sci-fi RPG, and Super Animal Royale, which has been out on Steam, Switch, and all the other consoles which I don't own. And for these games, all three of them I did music. Destiny's Sword and Super Animal Royale, I also did sound design, a little bit of voice acting, some implementation, and then in Destiny's Sword, I'm also doing some coding, working in Unity, stuff like that. I'm actually not sure if this is showing sound right now, but maybe what I can do is I'll just post the link to these slides after we're done, and people can take a listen to everything in their own time, because I don't use Google Meet that much, so I don't know if it shares sound or whatnot.
If you're sharing a Chrome tab, then it will share sound, but if you're not, then it won't.
Okay, I'm sharing my screen right now, so will I have to share a window instead?
It'll literally have to specifically be a Chrome tab. If you're using like PowerPoint, it's not gonna work because Google Meet's just like that.
Okay, yeah, you know what? I'll just post the slides afterwards because I'll let you all listen to my music in your own time. But yeah, so one thing that I like to do on these projects is that I am a contractor, I'm a freelancer, but I like to be part of the team and part of the community. So we'll get into sort of how the contract works on that, but I am on a retainer, so it's basically like I'm a part-time employee with these companies. And I've been working on Super Animal Royale for almost 4 years now. And I've been working with Destiny's Sword for like 3.5, and I'm working with them every weekend. And as stuff is needed, we're doing it, and it's really nice. It's because I have friends who are doing the you get to do all the sound and all the music for a game in a couple of weeks, and it's this massive crunch because they come to you at the very last moment, and then you do the whole thing, and then you're done, and then you say, okay, great, I wonder when my next project is going to come along. It's a lifestyle for some, but not for me. I like a little bit of consistency is really, really nice. But yeah, so all of these that you'll get to hear later, it's a nice sort of long process for these. It's great. So how the heck am I doing this? How am I making a living in game sound? It's surprising to me as well. But as I mentioned before, in university, I started doing some film music on the side of all my classes. I feel like it should be noted that I wasn't a great student. I got quite a few bad marks because I was focusing on the extracurricular stuff instead of my actual classes, but Shh, it's okay because nobody ever asked to look at your degree in the freelance world. Not a single person has ever asked to see my music degree. So as long as you can do it, that's all that matters. But in 2014, one of these composer friends of mine brought me down to this thing called a game jam. And I was like, what the heck is that? That sounds really neat. They brought me down to Global Game Jam. That was happening at George Brown College in 2014. And it was me and a friend and another friend and a stranger. And we made a short narrative game, which I'll just like, as if you can see it, it's like very simple. It's not going full screen. That's okay. It's just click around the screen, but we had a couple of different music tracks that would switch as you went between different styles of the same scene. So there was some idea of dynamic music happening in that. And I made a couple of tracks, and it was a lot of fun. But what really stuck out to me was the fact that the community there was so nice. I was completely taken aback by how friendly people were at this game jam. It was great. I loved it. So I decided right then and there, I'm going to work in games. And then in 2015, I started networking, and I had never worked on a game. This was the only thing on my, this was the only thing of experience I had, because up to that point I was focusing on, I'm probably going to be a film composer. So I started networking, and the way that I was doing it was I was going to all sorts of conventions and expos that were happening downtown. That's another theme throughout this, is that a lot of what I did, not terribly applicable right now, but we can certainly hope that by the time you're all graduated, we'll be able to go to in-person events again. But I was going to conventions and expos. There was a lot of events happening in Toronto, like Torontaru and Bonus Stage, and like it was a hub. I didn't even realize that Toronto was a hub for game design. But then I was here, and I was like, wow, there's so much stuff. And I got a small game on Steam called Unfinished, which you can play on Steam because it's still there. I don't know if I would recommend it because it was my first game, and I don't know if I want you hearing that. But you know what? I'm being vulnerable today. Maybe you can go look at it. And in between all of this networking, I was using Twitter to support sort of my in-person meetings. So, when I see someone, I follow them on Twitter. They follow me back. It's sort of like a business card exchange, but more fun. And so, I was just growing this nice community on Twitter. And then when I wasn't out networking at events, and just to be clear, I was going out like probably like 2 or 3 times a week. It was really, really exhausting. But I needed to meet people. And then in between that time, I would keep up with people on Twitter. Now I hear that Instagram is also good for game dev, social networking, which is good. But I've been using Twitter, and Twitter is surprisingly not terrible when you're just using it for game dev networking, which is pretty cool. Discord's also really good nowadays, which I'm sure you all know. Join a good Discord, and you're good for networking. But then in 2016, after I had my first game out, I was working, just trying to get any projects, right? And I was doing games for exposure. Block Swap was a game that released on mobile devices. Great developers, wonderful people. But of course, their first game, they had no money. So we put up a contract that was like, we're gonna do this for exposure. I'm not gonna get paid, but I needed experience, right? I was doing game jams, but I needed more stuff. I needed more things to practice because I couldn't make my own games, so I couldn't practice working on my own games, making sound and music. So I needed to find people, and so if you ever have this conversation of should I be working for free, it's really important to know your worth and know that you should be getting paid. But I think that the situation is more nuanced than a lot of people will say. If you need an opportunity to work on games and just make some stuff, then I think sometimes it's okay to take on a free game. Just expect that even if there's like a revenue share or something, you're probably not going to make any money on it. Sometimes you just need experience. Well, you know what? I'm happy to hear that Unfinished is doing decently. Then again, I think 2015 was like Steam was getting really flooded with games on the storefront, but I think it wasn't nearly as bad as it is now. So you're getting into a tough ocean there, but yeah, no, it was a good little game. It was nice. It was a really good sort of first project to get working on. And then I also put in here in 2016, the second half, I had to go work for 6 months full time in Mississauga with 3 hours of commuting a day at a warehouse. Sometimes you gotta get a side job to make rent. It's okay. It's fine. It at the time it felt like forever, but that's them's the breaks, and that's what we gotta do, because I got out of it and I got back to networking after that. So 2017, I got back into the flow of doing stuff, and I had a decent number of small games. Aria's Legacy and Dune Sea are two of the ones that came out of that, but there were like, I want to say like 8 others that like I got paid for, like I was contracted, and the games just never released. So that's a bit of a scary number, but that's something to keep in mind, is that sometimes these smaller projects just don't get finished because game dev is hard, as you are all learning. But yeah, I was doing these small projects on this contract of, I was getting paid sort of a lump sum for doing the work, which ran into some issues because sometimes, like I say, the project never finished, so we could never finish the work, so I never got fully paid for the project, which is part of the reason why I moved towards this retainer idea. But it was a good year. Lots of networking, lots of stuff. In the second half of 2017, I decided that all the in-person networking wasn't enough because I wasn't getting enough projects to make it full time. And I had a bit of a lull in work, so I decided I'm gonna start doing some content creation, because how it started was that I played Dark Souls for my first time, and I was just like, I need to make a video about Dark Souls. Yeah, I would say even that game dev is the Dark Souls of professions. Memes. No, it was and then I just decided I'm gonna keep making it. I'm gonna keep making videos because I had 25 years of game things that I want to talk about. So I was like, Majora's Mask, StarCraft, just like anything that I was coming up with, and it worked really well, because once I got in the groove of making content creation, which was like sort of game discussion videos, then I started working with, like, I was collaborating with others. There's a website, they're now called Canadian Game Devs. At the time they were Toronto Game Devs, and it's like a news website, and they showcase Canadian games, and they also had a podcast, and they were making videos. So I was like, oh, I can make music for their podcast. I can help them edit their videos. Just ways to sort of get involved in the community in more interesting ways. And this all sort of feeded into my online presence, which will be important later, because even though I don't like social media and stuff, this was a way, making YouTube videos, helping with podcasts and stuff, it was a way that I could get more invested in the online scene, rather than just tweeting everything I was doing, because that's not my style. But then in 2018, I, as Carter has pointed out, Akash is amazing. I did some mentoring with Akash, and we had just a couple of sessions, and he really opened my eyes to everything because I asked him, well, I just straight up asked him, do you think I should go to GDC? He's like, yeah. It's like, okay, I'll go to GDC. I'm terrified of going to GDC, but I'll go. And other things we were doing with him, I was doing with him was like, he would get me to just email people that I wanted to talk to. Not even like people to give me jobs. It was like I have never talked to Jim Guthrie. I want to talk to Jim Guthrie, and Cash was like, just email him, ask him a question. I'm like, you can do that. So I emailed Jim Guthrie, based on Akash's advice, and he answered back, and we just had a little chat, and I was like, oh, this is really neat. So Akash has a YouTube channel and a podcast now, and I would absolutely recommend all of you go check it out if you haven't already. And he's also a great sound designer. He did the sound for Hyper Light Drifter, and many other games as well, but that one's my favorite. So I went to GDC, and GDC was amazing. I spent a week at GDC in crowded rooms like this, which is like, I don't know, pretty anxiety inducing to see nowadays. But, you know, I was going in there and for a week, I was out like 16 hours a day talking to people. And I crashed so hard afterwards. I was like burnt out for a month, but it was worth it because I met a lot of people, including the developers of Super Animal Royale, who I started working with a month later. And one thing I like to mention, because this is like a perfect example of how I like to network and how I think it works. I volunteered to help with a party. It was not that picture, but it was in the same venue. And I volunteered, and I just said, "Hey, I want to help out." I ended up, they were doing like there was like a booth with voting that like you could vote on your favorite games that were being showcased. It was just for fun. And I was at the booth, and so I was just taking votes. And you know, I talked with everyone who dropped off a vote, and I met Michael from Pixel, Super Animal Royale. We got chatting. We were talking for like 10, 15 minutes, because it turned out that he was from Vancouver. So we're like, oh, cool, we're both Canadian. And we were hitting it off. I was like, oh, cool, okay, I've made a friend here. This is great. And then after 15 minutes, it comes up, I'm a composer. I didn't even mention it before. And then it just naturally came up in conversation. And then he says, oh, we need a composer for our game. Okay, you want to get together for coffee tomorrow and talk about it? Yeah, sure. Because the way I see it in this industry, probably a lot of industries, but especially in indie game dev, it's like you make friends, and then your friends hire you. If I was in a hiring position, I would just hire my friends because there are so many talented people out there and everyone wants to hire their friends. So I've always sort of looked at it that way of I'm trying to meet people and I'm trying to make meaningful, genuine connections with people. I want to work with people I like. And even if I don't work with them, I want to meet great people, and our industry is full of them. And then afterwards, maybe we'll work together. So I think that's like a pretty critical moment. So yeah, we started working together very shortly after that on their pre-alpha Animal Royale, which has been doing very well ever since, which is very exciting. And then shortly after I started working on Animal Royale, I was still doing conventions, still doing expos. I had met Two Dogs Games, who are working on Destiny's Sword. I met them very briefly at GDC, but we kept in touch over Twitter. And then when I said that I was going to the Canada Games Expo in Ottawa, they said, "Hey, we're going to be there. Come stop by our booth." And so I stopped by their booth, and the lead of the team asked, "Yeah, we need a composer. What are your rates?" And so I had to give him a number right there at the booth, which is always kind of scary. But thankfully, I felt pretty comfortable with that question now that I just finished the contract like side with Animal Royale. So I was like, okay, I actually have a number to give you, which is good. But again, it was like I met them briefly, but Twitter was how they remembered me and how we sort of connected back after that, which was really good. And then I started working with them shortly after, and then I was basically working full time. After 10, 12 games that didn't really go anywhere, in the span of 3 months, two came up that I was set for the next 4 years, which is pretty incredible. So I think I got really lucky with how short that took, because it was basically just over 3 years. Some people it takes 7, some people it takes longer. But I think the important thing is that, yeah, being good at what you do is really, really, really important. But nobody knows that you exist unless you're putting yourself out there, and whether that's being online, having a really important online presence, or if you're just going out and meeting people. Like, you need to be making those connections, and you're all here at the Game Sound Club, so you're already making like a really good first step towards that. So, mwah, love it. Well done. So then in 2019, I decided to continue saying yes to everything. I was working on little games here and there. I was going to PAX East and PAX West and a couple of other things. And I was like, I still want to make videos. I want to make podcasts. I burnt out like really hard, because I was working full time and I was still trying to keep up with all the networking and all this other stuff. So it's too much. And at the beginning of 2021, I burnt out. Which was really bad timing, because I decided to take March off, March of 2020, to rest up so I could get back to work. Hey, great timing, Jake. It's okay. Worse things have happened. So the nice thing was, once I got back in the groove of working, how long did my burnout last for? I don't think I'd say that I'm fully recovered from it yet, given the current state of everything. But it was like but it was definitely like I had to take a month off. So I took off March, and I'd say like maybe the 2 months before that, my productivity was like pretty shot. It was pretty tough. And I would say it wasn't until I think I was back at like mostly 100%, as much as what you can be 100% during COVID. Maybe like 4 months later. Like, it was a long time. It was really, really tough. And it was tough too, because since there was no networking happening, because I don't really like online events, it was tough because I couldn't interact with people to help me sort of get out of my funk, right? So it was challenging, but one of the nice things that happened during that time was that all of this online presence that I had been building up through all my videos and podcasts and stuff, because every time any episode of the Canada Game Devs podcast went out, they linked to my website. All of my videos, which were getting millions of views, were linking to my website. Everything was linking to my website. That's really good for SEO. When the developer of Darkest Valley typed in Canadian game composer, my name was like the first on the list. I think it might still be. Some variation of Canada and game and composer leads to my name being on the top of the list, which I totally do not deserve to be at the top of the list. But that's what's good when you have a lot of online presence. So he found my website, listened to my stuff, and you found me. Hey, good. It didn't take that long. That's a good sign. Yeah, all of that online presence led to someone. They were still in Vancouver. I like working with people in Vancouver, even though I'm in Toronto. I don't know why. But he reached out and we talked, and we said, okay, great. It's a good fit. So I started working on Darkest Valley, sort of as I was getting out of my burnout, which was really, really cool. And I just sort of wrapped it up a couple of months ago. So it was still like a year and a half of work. Now I'm just waiting for him to finish the game. But the music's basically done. Thank you. Thank you very much. But yeah, so all this is to say the in-person stuff was very important. in meeting people. But obviously, the online presence really supported everything I was doing. So even right now, even though I'm not that active online anymore, um, someone's being called out. Even though I'm not being that active online anymore, the seeds have been sowed, right? Even though I haven't been to an in-person networking event in so long. Oh man, someone's getting roasted. Holy moly. But yeah, even though I haven't done much in-person networking the past 2 years, I still know a lot of people. You know, it's like I've sowed a lot of seeds. So everything is important. Every single little interaction you have with people and everything you put online, it's all builds up to having a presence, and that's like really, really important. So now that we've talked I guess if anyone has like a question specifically to what we've talked about so far, now would probably be the best time. About networking, online, in person. I didn't talk about game jams that much during this, so I should mention that. I was doing mostly in-person game jams, Toronto Game Jam, Global Game Jam. I did like Ludum Dare maybe twice. But going into a game jam as a floater is really good. So you float for music or sound design. And I mean, I think one time at Toe Jam, I did 6 or 7 games in a weekend. And it's a lot, and it was super busy, but it was great because that was 6 or 7 teams of people that I got to not only meet and hang out with, but I also got to get a one-on-one working experience with them, which is like the best networking you could ever have, because you learn if you like each other, which is like, okay, great, I've made a friend. But also you might really like working together, because that's the dream, the opportunity to just work with someone for a weekend. If you didn't like working together, you never have to do it again. But if you like it, then it's like, why wouldn't they hire you for their next game? Like their next game that they're actually going to release, you know? So game jams are like, I think, the best networking you could ever do. And it's really good for building up a portfolio as well, right? It's like, even though I had a couple of games I did for exposure, I think the amount of games I did. I mean, I had like 25 game jam games in a few years or something. It's like, that's a lot of things that I can put on a demo reel if I don't have anything else, right? So it's really really good practice and really good for all that. But if there's no questions about that so far, nope, here we go. Sweet. What do you find to be a solution that works for you when trying to overcome burnout? Do you just give it time and let yourself recover, or any actions that you could take to get over it? So I think it's a combination of both, because when I hit that burnout, the first thing I needed to do was nothing for a while. I had just gotten my first VR headset at the time, and I think I just spent like 8 hours a day in virtual reality. You know, it's just like, I just need an escape for a bit. Oh, there's a bunch of stuff on Netflix I haven't watched. I'm going to watch Evangelion. Wow, Evangelion is the greatest show of all time. Amazing. At the beginning, I just needed to do nothing. Trying to walk as much as possible. Just trying to get out and, you know, not be a complete hermit. But when I sort of get over that initial stage and I feel like I can do something, then I think it's really important to be very easy and compassionate with myself, and that I'm not going to give myself a schedule to work on something, because that's going to stress me out. But I need to be doing something creative. I need to be doing something to help get the ideas going. Whether that's directly related to music or games or not, because it was like 2017 that I started getting into science, like specifically like physics, astrophysics and cosmology and stuff like that. So it was like what if I just like read 3 books about black holes and then tried to make some music that sounded like a black hole? But the music part was after I just read about black holes, and I'm like, oh wow, let's do thought experiments about black holes. And then that generated ideas. Then I was like, oh, I want to make music about a black hole. So it was just a matter of like, after just being a lump for a bit, trying to get some sort of activities that inspires. I think that's really important. One thing I did last year to sort of help this along was I bought a bass guitar because I have never played bass, and I thought that it would be fun. And it was, and I really enjoy it. And it's something that I can do that's still adjacent to everything I'm doing. But when I'm playing bass, I'm not thinking about work. I'm just playing bass. I'm just having fun playing bass. And so it's really important to have creative endeavors that aren't directly related to making money, I think. I think that's really, really important. And the other thing I found that really helped, really helped, was to not just consume media to fill time, because it's super easy to do that forever, but to find new experiences that, again, sort of generate creativity. So Evangelion was actually really good for me for that. Like, Evangelion was like, wow, this is great. But I remember, like, every once in a while I really get into playing, I don't know, MTG Arena, and I'm like, oh, I'm just playing so much MTG Arena, it's great. But it's not like generating new ideas. It's not making me think about things, it's just playing some cards. Whereas when I played a game like The Witness or Fez or Omori, or even when I started playing a game like Stellaris or Elite Dangerous, it's like, wow, this is like really exciting me, I'm getting ideas. I think that's important rather than just watching or playing something for the sake of doing that. I am so happy to hear that, Anthony. That is so good to hear. Yeah, no, I think that those are like the main things that helped me get out of that. Even right now, it's like I played so much Elden Ring over the weekend. Like, it was such a good time. But I realized, in the like 7th or 8th hour of playing in a row, when I was still up at like 2 a.m., I'm like, I don't think I'm playing this for like excitement. I think I'm just sort of going through the motions right now, So it's like being able to find that time and like pull it back. I think it's important. Yeah, this could really easily turn to an Elden Ring fan club, I think. So let's go back to to Carter's question. If I was looking purely at indies or aiming for any bigger projects or non-game projects. I didn't actually mention, but the reason, sort of before the game jams, that made me realize that doing game music was a possible thing. The games that were really exciting me, and this is kind of going on about what I was just talking about, in playing things that generate ideas and creativity and inspire. The games that were really exciting me during university were all indie games. It was stuff like Bastion, FTL, Sword and Sorcery, Super Brothers, Super Hexagon. Like, these were all games that I was like, wow, these are really amazing games. And then I look them up, and I'm like, this was made of a team of like 5 people. It was incredible. And so games like that were really exciting me, and I was like, wow, I could probably work on indie games, because it didn't seem as daunting as trying to get into these big companies. And even then, I wasn't as excited about those big companies anymore. I was really excited about these small, focused experiences. So I have been focusing on working with indies. And while even at this point in my career, I think if I got offered to do a big project, I wouldn't turn it down, but I'm not looking for it. I'm looking for working with smaller developers because I feel like they have the really exciting, interesting ideas that I want to work on. So yeah, I'm focusing on indies, and it's working. I'm like I say, I'm working full time, and I'm like comfortably making a living. Like it's not terrible. So I dig it. I dig it. But yeah, so I think the other things to mention, it's just about sort of what the whole broad idea of game audio, because when I first got into this, I could only do music and I only wanted to do music. But then once I started doing the game jams, I was doing sound design. And then when I got hired for a project, they'd say, "Do you also do sound design?" And of course I said yes, because I wanted the extra work and I wanted the experience and stuff. A lot of small teams just want a single audio person. They don't want to have to worry about having a composer and a sound designer. So it was a skill that I picked up, and this was from the Game SoundCon survey in 2017, I think. Composers 72% of the time also do sound design. Um, this is definitely like an indie thing, because in a bigger company you'd have people do it. You'd probably have a team of like 20 sound designers doing a game, but in the indie space it's like a lot of composers are doing sound design. And as you can see, audio integration, like working with Fmod or Wise. I like Fmod. Both are fine, but I'm doing the integration. The game integration, which is taking either audio directly and working with Unity's audio engine or Unreal's audio engine, or using Fmod and Wise and putting it in. I do some of that as well. That's like something that I'm learning more recently, including C# and scripting. This is like, I'm just learning this now. And very few sound people know how to do this. So if you know how to be a coder and you want to be a game audio person, you are like a unicorn. Like you are in such a good position to be able to do that. But it's interesting because each person has a different selection of these skills, and it's all usable. And if you have any weaknesses in any of these areas, you will be able to find people to help you out. But if you want to be like the ultimate audio person, you could learn everything. And then, yeah, like everyone would want to hire you for everything. But I think it's just to show, like, when I started, I was just doing music and sound design, and I got hired, and now I'm starting to learn all these other things. So you don't have to know everything. You don't have to ultra instinct game audio master engineer. You don't need to learn everything at the front, but it's really important to sort of consider what you excel at and what you can learn and want to learn. I will get back to the question about GDC in just a moment once I sort of finish this tangent. Yes.
I'm gonna interrupt real quick for 1 second. So sorry.
That's
Google Meet is great, and I forgot that these calls end in an hour unless it's on our school accounts, and my bozo head made it on not that account. So we can continue the conversation, I'm just gonna post a link real quick in the chat, and if we can move to that, yeah, we're gonna do a little migration, and if we can move there, that'd be great. I am very sorry for the inconvenience. That's my fault.
You're good. You're good.
So yeah, I just dropped the link in the chat, and we can move there.
All right. Sweet. See y'all in a moment. Okay. So let me share the screen again. Okay, awesome. Are we seeing that? Is that good? Yeah? Okay, cool. Okay. So and I did copy and paste the question about GDC, so we'll get to that. So just sort of a last thing to mention is I mentioned it a bit earlier, the idea of different ways in which you can be charging for these services. And this is something I think is important to know contracts and stuff. This retainer idea of working with them, sort of basically, I give them a certain number of days weekly, and then they pay me monthly. So it is the equivalent of having a part-time job, which is great. But every other method is totally fine because some people prefer doing like per deliverable of, you know, every sound effect's worth this much, every track of music is worth this much, or doing some sort of big lump sum. There's a lot of ways to do it. And it's all viable, but I think the important thing to consider is when working on music, and this is good to know whether you're going to be a composer or just a game developer in general, it's really valuable for a composer to be able to keep their rights to the music, because it means that they get to keep their copyright, which is means that the music belongs to the composer, and that means that you can do stuff like releasing it under your own name on a Bandcamp or on Spotify or stuff like that. It also means that if they ever figure out any of this performing rights stuff, it means that if the game is played and my music is in it, then it means I will get performance royalties for that. Because the way it works in film and TV is that every time it's played in a theater or on TV or a Netflix stream, the composer gets paid for that play. Games have not figured out how to do that yet, because how do you charge it? Is it per hour of playing? Is it per download of the game? Like, there's so many different ways that it could happen that they haven't figured out how to do it yet. But one day they might, and then I might have a bunch of back end like money to be made, because I think the idea is that for a film composer or a TV composer, like 50% of your income is what you get paid to make it, and then the other 50% is this performance royalty money that you'll make over the rest of your career. It's all passive income, because the TV networks or whatever have to pay royalties. So for now, the equivalent of that is that if I get Spotify streams because I release the music under my own Spotify account, because I own the rights, then, you know, I'll get some money from Spotify streams. It is, I mean, yeah, it's passive income. And generally, if games tend to do well, their soundtracks also tend to do well. The two sort of go hand in hand. So, you know, if that's one way that I can make passive income, which is helpful for if I don't want to be working every hour of my life until I die, you know? That would be nice. So yeah, that's sort of what I have to say about that. So that's my face right now asking for questions, and I'm gonna get to this GDC question. When you went to GDC, did you have a demo reel lined up? And do you think it's totally okay to just go and try to network in an event like this with just a SoundCloud or YouTube page? Cool. Yes, I think it's totally fine to go network without having a demo reel lined up. But I think the important thing is that it's easy for people to find you. Like, I was giving business cards after like talking with them or chatting with them for a bit. And we were still doing the like follow each other on Twitter. If we hit off, you just pull out your phone. Hey, we'll follow each other on Twitter. And on my Twitter page, it was linking to my website, but you could have it linking to a YouTube page. SoundCloud, I think is it's fine, but I think it's always good to have that visual element because games are a audiovisual medium, so I think it's good to show that correlation, because you can, I mean, music is great, but a lot of game music, it frankly, it can be tough for it to stand up by itself, you know, like it's part of the reason why people listen to a lot of game music as background music, while they're studying or whatever. So it's a bit tough, but yeah, I think having like some sort of engaging thing for them to watch or listen to, after they've met you is good, because it will help strengthen sort of that meeting that you had. But like one idea that I had, and don't any of you take this, I swear, is that I would love to have like an interactive demo reel. So you open up my website and it just loads into a little game hosted on my website that's like you can walk through my demo reel in whatever way that makes sense, right? And that would be very engaging because you'd be able to get a hands-on approach, because games are interactive. It's like, wouldn't it be cool if I could set up some dynamic music and you could play through it, right? So I do know how to make a Unity WebGL build now. Now I just need to be able to make something good, and so that I can make a build of it. I haven't gotten to that part yet. But you know, I think it's good to have that engaging thing. But definitely, I think that especially in in-person events, it's far more important that they like you, than having a good demo reel, because probably of everyone that I've, you know, we mutual followed or that I gave him a business card to, probably like 99% of them didn't even look at what I had posted, whether it was my pinned tweet or on my website. But it's important to have that to back you up. Absolutely. I wouldn't rely on it, you know. But yeah. Any other questions about not even stuff that I talked about? Do you just have like a burning game audio question to ask?
I've got a lot of questions, as I'm sure will shock nobody. But yeah, if anyone has anything, you can feel free to come on the mic too. But if not, it's all good. Just fire away in chat. If not, though,
Go for it.
Yeah, I've got.
Lead the charge.
Yeah, might as well. I was curious. What's it like negotiating with like student filmmakers and stuff versus like actual indies? Like, is there any difference with like actually having a contract or just verbal agreements or that sort of thing? Or
Definitely having a contract is like super important. It adds like a layer of professionalism to the whole thing. Even like at the beginning when we were just doing like, even for exposure stuff, like I still had a contract with those people. Because the contract was saying, hey, Jake's not getting paid anything for this, and we might give like a revenue split if we make enough money. But putting that like set like a professional set like a professional precedent to the whole thing, right? Nowadays it's like the contract is a must for me. Like it's obviously really, really important. But a lot of the times it's still sort of like an educational experience for both of us, because especially like with the rights things, like composers' rights and stuff like that, like a lot of people don't know how that works. So if anything, the contract's a good way for me to explain that to them, you know. But starting out, one thing that really helped me at the beginning actually was I'm part of the Screen Composers Guild of Canada.
oh wow.
and it's like I think for a student membership it's like $75 a year. Like it's not too bad.
Huh.
But one thing that was really great was that they had a model contract specifically for film and TV. But you and we're going to be working on a model contract for games, but that was like really good because it gave me like a good basis for how to build my own contract. And the Game Audio Network Guild, I think, also has a model contract that I might have taken some ideas from as well. But it's one of those things where, like, if you show up to an indie game with like a 20-page contract, it's gonna scare them off, you know.
Yeah.
So if there's a way that you can like reduce that down, this is like the contract thing is something that you'll build up over time. But even at the very beginning, if you want to make a project like feel legit, stick a contract on that, even if it's a short like 1 or 2 pager. It's like just listing out some basic guidelines. It's not going to hold up in court, but it's going to set a precedent for the project and the relationship. So I think that's really important. Absolutely.
That's really interesting. I was gonna ask if you like consulted with any like entertainment media lawyers or anything for that, but you kind of answered that with just getting the templated reference ones.
The template was good because that was definitely written by lawyers, but it is still something on my to-do list that like after I'm like, I think before I started another project, I would definitely hire an entertainment lawyer to go over my current contract just to make sure that it's sound. But I think right now, for the purposes of these projects, it's like it's working out. It's definitely working out. And if I've gained such a relationship with them that if I did get the entertainment lawyer and we rewrote the contracts, I think that the teams would be fine with it. So I'm feeling pretty secure right now. Yeah.
Nice.
Yeah.
All right. I just kept adding more questions. Oh my god.
Sweet. If anyone else has a question, feel free to like
interrupt
put it
me
in the chat or type like raise his hand or something, and we'll interrupt Carter's questions for yours.
Please do. I encourage it.
But by all means, continue.
Yeah. All right, thank you. I was kind of curious. Who are some of your like biggest influences, or like, what games are your biggest influences, or even stuff that you reference, like any books or anything. Don't need to be like game composers specifically or anything, but I'm just curious.
Yeah. Yeah, it's interesting because when I was growing up, like I was very much into like the grand orchestral stuff, you know. It was like Final Fantasy and Zelda and all other games are completely leaving my brain. But that was like I was really into that for a while, and I still like it. And even with Darkest Valley, I got the opportunity to like write some of that, which was really, really cool. But definitely like the games that, like I mentioned, FTL and stuff like that. Like I'd say around 2015, I actually like really discovered electronic music for my first time. And Hotline Miami had like a big thing to do with that. Like when I played Hotline Miami, I was like, wow, synthesizers are beautiful. And I don't have like a lot of gear, but I do have a Korg Minilog.
Ooh,
Analog
nice.
synth over there, which is like my baby. I've had it for 5 years now, and I use it like every day. Like it's so good. Wow, I completely messed up my camera when I did that. But yeah, it was like, yeah, because my introduction into that was actually Drive. Drive,
great movie.
the amazing movie.
Oh yeah.
Which inspired Hotline Miami, of course. Yeah. That was like sort of my first like dive into that. And since then, it's like games like Fury have like really taken like that sound and turned it into something like really, 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 really good.
Oh yeah.
But definitely, yeah, like synthwave and sort of that whole thing like has been great. But in high school, rolling back a little bit, I was really into metal for years, like Dream Theater, Symphony X, Between the Buried and Me. That's like really the only band that I like still actively listen to. That's metal. Um, but but all of this is to sort of say I l- I like stuff that is like pretty like it wears its emotions on its sleeve, It's like because the orchestral stuff is like big, beautiful, it makes you feel so big and grand, and then metal is just like it's very in your face, and since a lot of synthwave is very in your face. I also enjoy like a lot of the like quieter sort of like Sigur Rós or Oliver Arnold's, Johan
Mm.
Johansson, sort of this very like intimate style of music, um, and uh, and all this started with my mom, who was a fiddler, who was a folk musician. It's like
That's so
I've
cool.
had I've had so many influences over the years, but definitely it's like I feel like that's sort of that's like my thing is that I like stuff that evokes something, and that's the most terribly vague answer. But all this is to say, if it's like kind of, I'm this is all just going to be a big dunk on lo-fi hip hop beats. I'm sorry. Like it's just yeah, that's really what this is all turning into. I'm sorry. Um, thoughts on Stan Rogers? I'm not gonna lie. I completely forget who Stan Rogers is. Oh, Stan Rogers. Yeah, Stan Rogers is decent. I'm sorry. um, but yeah, definitely, and again in later years, it's like sort of the uh, the the science stuff has really gotten to my brain. It's like the
Mm.
idea of like the cosmos and what is the nature of reality, and the idea that we're like so massive compared to an atom, but so tiny compared to a galaxy. I don't know. All this like really cheesy but interesting technical stuff has like been really, really sweet lately. So
That's really cool. I mean, it gets Hans Zimmer places, so can't be that bad.
yeah, I suppose so.
Yeah.
Um, I realized one thing I didn't really mention though
Mm.
is just in terms of games. Quick rattling off of favorite games of all time. Majora's Mask up there. Uh, Shadow of the Colossus. While I don't think I would play it now, it was hugely influential on me in 2005. Um, Dark Souls, beautiful, amazing game. Um, and Hotline Miami is definitely up there. And I'd say like Fez. Fez
Mm.
is really, really good. Both the music and everything in it, and The Witness is also really good, even though it doesn't really have music. Just the game is really good. So that's my quick rattling off.
Cool. That was a good answer. I like that.
Yeah, it's easy to get me on a tangent.
Oh yeah, we love those. It shows passion. It's good. Um, that one you kind of answered already. Ooh, this one. Um, so you didn't really touch on this too much, but how have you found your musical background? Um, I guess in support of your game stuff. Like, did you feel that it kind of helped you out there, or
Mm.
like open you up to different ways of looking at music, like Roman numeral analysis and all that, technical stuff, or is it just purely off of vibes how you write?
Um, it definitely supports it, but I don't think it's necessary in the slightest
Mm.
because like I was classically trained on piano, and I know theory, But it's one of those things where I'm like slowly losing my theory over the years because I don't
Mm.
actively practice it. And that's fine. Yes, I classically trained on piano. And which is a skill. I cannot play Winter Wind. Sorry. Uh, I'm not taking any live requests right now. Sorry. But if anything, it's like yeah, a lot of it is vibe based, a lot of it is getting in the flow, but one thing that really does help is the idea of being able to look at something from a technical standpoint, even if it's not theory necessarily, but the idea of looking at something and being like, okay, this track structure isn't working. What do I need to change about it? You know? And even if I'm not actively using theory in doing a practice like that, it's really important that I have practiced being critical of music in that way and being able to pick apart something. Because even if I'm not picking apart the notes and the chords and the progressions and the harmonies and stuff like that, I'm still able to take a track, and if the vibe isn't working, I can critically think it out. That's been really, really important. Would I be making the music that I'm making now if I didn't have that theory background and if I wasn't classically trained on piano? I would not be making the same music, but I'm sure that it would probably still be decent. It would just be different.
Yeah.
Because my brain would think differently. I wouldn't be thinking in chord progressions like I do now. I would be thinking in a different way. And I think that's cool if people come at music from a non-theory, non-Western traditional background, it means they're going to make different stuff. And that's really cool. That's really sweet. So I think there's zero issue with that. Absolutely.
That is really cool. I've been having off and on thoughts for the past couple of years about whether or not I should actually pursue that, because a bunch of my friends went to like U of T for the jazz program, and I know a few other people that have gone into other music programs, and I never really knew if it was for me. But I did know that a bunch of my heroes, like Marty O'Donnell, he always talks about how he went to school. So I don't know, it's always been one of those things that I've kind of thought about.
I think it's a tool in the toolkit that you can use, but you don't need it.
Yeah.
I think it's one of those things. It'll come in handy at times, but like honestly, like sometimes I get kind of annoyed that my brain thinks in chord progression. So sometimes I won't even like look at the keyboard, and I'll just open up a DAW, or I'll open up like some program that I don't use often. This is part of the reason why I've been like thinking about getting into trackers for a while, is that if I opened up a tracker like LSDJ, or I guess that one's Game Boy only, but one of these chiptune trackers, that would force me to write music in a different way than I am now, and I think that that's really valuable to have different ways of doing it. So yeah, it's a tool in the toolkit. I think that's the best way to say it.
That is a really good way of saying it. Yeah. The last few things I actually kind of got, but I was curious because you kind of mentioned this earlier. Do you mix and master your own stuff as well?
Oh yeah.
All right, cool.
Oh yeah.
How do you find like producing? Because I'm assuming you don't learn that in school unless you do.
I didn't. Well, so my high school I learned some production, which was really good.
Okay.
But
That's
if I
interesting.
listen to the stuff I was producing in high school, it is garbage. It's so bad. But the basic idea of it was on me at the time.
Yeah.
But yeah, no, like producing and mixing and stuff like that. That was all stuff I started learning in university while working on the student film projects, and it's just a skill that I've continued to work on ever since. But yeah, I'd say I am like completely like self-learned producer basically. And I think my stuff sounds okay. It could sound better. And there have been some projects that I've considered getting a producer, but a lot of the time, on on an indie game budget, it just makes sense to produce it myself.
Mm.
One thing that I really want to do is start incorporating more live musicians into my soundtracks, because there's only so far you can go with like a MIDI solo violin.
Yeah.
That's one thing I would really like to do. But again, it's one of those things where the budget sort of has to allow for it.
Yeah.
And a lot of the time it's a bit tricky to incorporate that, especially with games where sort of the development is drawn out, and you're not entirely sure how much music you're going to need to record for the violinist, stuff like that. But definitely, I'm aware that there's a limit to what I can do in terms of making digital instruments sound good. And I think there is always like an element of creative collaboration in sending something off to a violinist. They're going to give it their own flavor and their own style, which is always good. And that will feed back and make the whole project better. So that's definitely like on my wish list of stuff to do more often, is to incorporate more people in my things. But in terms of producing, it's like the only time that it kind of feels overwhelming is when I'm doing like a full orchestral thing.
Yeah.
Because like with Darkest Valley, because that's like full orchestra and it's all MIDI orchestra.
Okay.
I would say composing actually for me only takes like half the amount of time I work on a track. The other half is making it go from sounding like a MIDI orchestra to sounding better, And the good thing about video games is that sometimes it feels like people aren't quite as picky about how good the instruments sound, which is very nice for me. But it's one of those things that's like, it's something that I want to improve on. So I don't want it to sound like a big ol' MIDI fest. I want it to sound decent. So yeah, big mixing projects like that can be pretty exhausting. But thankfully I'm in like, in the past year, I was able to like make an actual like sound treated room for myself.
Nice.
Because previous to this, I was doing everything on these headphones.
Wow.
Yeah, I was doing a lot of mixing on headphones.
Huh.
Yeah, thanks so much for inviting me, Hemraj, and yeah, it was really nice to have you here. Thank you. What's your favorite part in the music making process? And subsequently, what's the least fun part? I mean, the favorite part is making the music itself. The most difficult thing would probably be mixing. I think that's fair. I think I would probably agree with that, to be honest, because when you're in, like, I never get in a flow for mixing personally. It's very easy to get in the flow for writing. But mixing tends to get I don't know how to get in the flow for that. Because when you're in the flow for writing music, it's just easy street. Like it's just ideas are coming to you and you're putting them down and it's great. So definitely that early process. But sometimes the composition process is tough because for whatever reason, like the thing that I'm being asked to write is not exactly what I would be writing if it was up to me. And so sometimes that's really challenging, and sometimes getting over that hump of I'm being asked to write this and I'm not entirely sure how. That can be really challenging sometimes, and it can be a bit of a grind because you'll spend this is the thing, is if you spend an entire day writing and tossing out ideas, that's really tough when you're done a full day. Or if you do summon, you're like, okay, this isn't working today, I'm going to return to it tomorrow, and then the next day it also doesn't work, and then you have to return to it the next day, and you don't have anything to show for it. That's really challenging. And that's the kind of stuff that doing it as a professional, you need to learn to roll with. And also you need to learn to write, even if you don't feel like it. Because it can be challenging, and sometimes even if I'm not super excited about an idea that I write, but it's been like I really can't come up with a good idea, I'll say, okay, this is a creative collaboration with the developer. I'm going to send this to them. I'm going to tell them my own concerns and my own issues, and saying, I feel like I'm not exactly finding what I want. Do you have, like, how does this sound? Does this match up with what you were imagining? What might we be able to do to change and fix this and adapt it? And sometimes they just say, wow, this is perfect. And I'm like, oh, okay, I hate it, but okay, great, let's do it. I don't tell them the I hate it part, but it's it definitely it's being a bit open in that. But one important thing to remember is that even if you don't exactly like what you've written, you still have to do a little bit of production to it, a little bit of producing and mixing, because I've tried sending like piano mock-ups to developers before, and it'll be like the full track, 3 minutes or 4 minutes long or whatever, and it'll have all the elements, it'll have the harmonies and melodies and the structure and everything. And I'm like, okay, so this is it. It's a piano mock-up. So I didn't orchestrate it or add anything else to it yet. But just to give you the general idea. And they'll say, so it's gonna have other instruments, right? And I'm like, yeah. They're like, I can't imagine that. And it's like, oh, right, because you're not hearing the same thing in my head. Like when I have my piano and it's going like a big like bump 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 in the bass, it's like I obviously in my head I know that those are like big percussive hits or whatever, but they don't know that, you know. So it's really important to like take an extra step and make it sound loosely what it's gonna sound like. Even if it's just like a little bit, like if like in one of those 3-minute tracks, I might take like the first 30 seconds and orchestrate it just to give them an idea. This is what it would sound like, you know? Yeah, one important thing to learn about music is that there's no concrete vocabulary to be using a lot of the time. So just like overwhelming amounts of communication is really important to be able to get ideas across, because sometimes clients will tell me really obscure, vague ideas like this track is not blue enough. It needs more luster. And to me, luster means like it's produced shiny, like it's really bright and stuff. But to them, it just means they want it to sound better, like and it's like, what does better mean? Better means nothing. It's every team I work with, I need to learn their vocabulary so that I can work within that and understand what they're trying to say. It's like it's like an interpreter's job, to be perfectly honest. So, yeah. Is it the same thing with coding? All right, I look forward to that. I know there's so many different ways to create a similar system in coding, but yeah, that's something I'm going to be learning more and more as I continue on my programming journey. So, yeah. Any other questions?
Oh, I just thought of one. I don't want to keep you though. Like,
Okay, how about we say
yeah.
one more Carter question? If anyone else has a question, they can throw that in as well. We'll take one more Carter question.
All right.
You have great questions, Carter.
Thank you. But yeah, I just don't want to, like, you've been doing great. What was it? Right. So sound design and sound effects. You said you've kind of done some stuff with that. So you want to talk a bit about like, I guess your process? Like, do you use like Foley, just synthesize everything? Like what does sound design look like to Jake?
It is a bit of everything. I use a combination of synthesis and Foley and uh, editing libraries, basically. It's sort of a combination of everything. Um, because there are some things that I don't really have an opportunity, or I should say, I could make myself the opportunity, but I'm not interested in sound design enough to say go record my own gunshots. That's not something that's like a step I'm not interested in taking. Just because I'm more into music than sound design. I feel like
Hmm.
I feel like given the chance, I would transition to doing just music and just drop the sound design element of it. Just because in terms of like working on these sort of micro projects of like I'm making this tiny little sound effect and I'm listening to it over and over and over and over and over while working on it. It's like that's not my type of creativity that I really jive with. Um, but the idea of synthesis is really fun because you're just creating sounds, and if you find something that sounds cool, then you record that and you sort of squirrel it away for later. No, I really like all of that. That's really fun, but it's when it's like sort of the more plain stuff of like, yeah, we need to make some footsteps, we need to make some gunshots, we need to make some ambiances. That's stuff that I could take or leave. So a lot of the time, I will like be editing sound libraries. I find that quite fun sometimes, taking a sound and just like completely mangling it with different effects and stuff. Um, and then yeah, if I need to do a little bit of Foley, I'll do it. I have this room set up and all that. And yeah, but it's definitely like maybe part of the reason that I've never gotten really into it is because I've never found a process that really excites me.
Hmm.
And that might just be a case of I've been doing music so long that I've had so much experiences with it that I know what gets the creative juices going. And so much of my sound design experience has been in a working environment that I haven't really had a chance to explore it outside of that. Like we have a sound that we need, make it, you know. Um, so that's something that's definitely like it's sort of on the back burner. But for me, it's like instead of learning that, I would much rather learn how to code so that I can make a dynamic music system. Like that's sort of my focus more. The sound design tends to be a very applicable thing.
Okay.
So yeah.
Right,
Yeah.
gotcha.
Yeah. All right. All
There
right.
we
We
go.
got one more question. Nice. What production element have you struggled with learning the most? For me, compression is something that's been really hard to wrap my mind around. I feel like I'm just starting to get it. Oh. I think for me, because I like making big music with a lot of layers. And that's really challenging to mix because it's really difficult to make it so that every sound has a place in the mix. Because if everything is sharing similar frequencies and similar spaces in like the stereo pan and stuff, then things start to get very muddy very fast. So it's been really challenging for me to find a place for every single little element, and you do that through EQ, through compression, and making sure that like some sounds have like really nice transients that help them pop above everything else. Getting like a really decent stereo panning. And really, a lot of it is like just learning to embrace automation, just like automating everything so that things are constantly shifting around to get them where they need to be, to get them in that place, because if you have just if you have piano and it's the only thing happening, you want it to have that nice big round sound that's filling up the aural space. But then as soon as everything else comes in, then that piano needs to find a spot among all the other instruments. So that's definitely been really challenging to learn how to fit every little detail and every layer into a big piece of music. Definitely. And that's a big answer because it encompasses almost every element of production, you know? But even just, yeah, like finding a good spot in the EQ for every instrument to sit is like really, really important. So, yeah.
All
Cool.
right.
Well, thank you everyone for the excellent questions. I appreciate that.
Yeah, I
Feels like it's fun.
appreciate your great answers.
Yeah.
And yeah, thank you again so much for coming out. Really, really do appreciate it. You were fantastic.
Yeah.
And yeah, everyone go check out his YouTube channel. It's super informative. I accidentally stumbled on it while looking for stuff for like a session like 2 weeks ago, I want to say, or 3 or 4
Nice.
weeks ago. I was like, oh hey, that's Jake.
Yeah.
So that
Yeah,
was
the
funny.
videos are getting a bit old, but I think I still have some good stuff in there.
Oh
So
yeah, definitely do.
nice.
But yeah, check out his YouTube, check out his Bandcamp. Animal Royale's got like what, 30 tracks now? 40? It's
A lot.
huge.
Yeah, it's massive.
Yeah.
Yeah, there's so many little things in that track, in that soundtrack.
Yeah.
And if you haven't, one thing that's fun is that on the Pixel YouTube channel we do like an animation series called Super Animal Royale Tonight, which sort of is like the storytelling aspect of the game because we don't do too much of it in the game other than like environmental storytelling.
Mm.
And I score all of those episodes as well. So
Wow.
there's a little bit of that film scoring niche getting played there, which is fun. So yeah,
That's super cool.
cool.
So check that out too, everyone.
Thank you for the plugs. Thank you.
Oh, always. Yeah. And yeah, that was super good. I really enjoyed that.
Awesome. Yeah, thank you so much for having me here, everyone. And yeah, I wish you all the best in your club and being able to apply all this extracurricular stuff to all your projects coming up. So I think it's awesome that you guys have this.
Absolutely. Thank you.
Cool. All right, I'm gonna head off. So
All
take
right.
care, everyone.
Take care. Have a good night.
Bye.
See ya. All right. Yeah, everyone. Thanks for coming out. Now that he's gone, I just want to say next week's session is happening. I forget what it's on. Right, it's on music theory. So if you want to learn everything crammed into an hour, that'll be fun. All right. Yeah, feel free to head out now. Thanks for coming out. Really appreciate it. Cheers.